Hey, History Seeking here, and today's walking tour is at Rufford Abbey Gardens, located in Nottinghamshire. The abbey was founded in the 12th century by Gilbert de Gaunt, Earl of Lincoln, and in 1536, Rufford was one of the first abbeys to be affected by the suppression of the monasteries by King Henry VIII. The whole estate was acquired by George Talbot, 4th Earl of Shrewsbury, and was transformed into a country house. In 1626, through the marriage of Mary Talbot, the estate was passed on to her husband, Sir George Savile, 2nd Baron, and remained in the family for several centuries. Over time the house expanded, and by the 1950s, through war and neglect, the estate was in a sorry state, and in 1952 was purchased by Nottingham City Council. And in 1956, the Ministry of Works took over. There is a history of ghostly sightings, with a turbulent history. Rufford's role during the war. In World War I, Rufford made rough-cut wood coffins for the dead of the First World War, but this war was heralded by the beginning of the end for many large country estates, and Rufford was no exception. The estate suffered from rising taxes and wages, and reduced income from farm rents, so that by 1938, the trustees of the young 3rd Baron were forced to sell the 18,730-acre estate. The estate at this time included a 500-acre deer park, 70 farms, 2,000 acres of woodland, 4 public houses and many individual properties in Eakring, Bilsthorpe, Ollerton, Edwinstowe, Booton, Egmonton, Walesby, Wellow and Curtin. The estate, house and contents were bought by Sir Albert Ball, a Nottingham industrialist and father of the First World Victoria Cross and Air Ace. He sold the contents at auction and much of the estate in separate lots for development in 1938, and the abbey and its grounds were purchased by the eccentric Henry Talbot de Vercliffton. Rufford, with its long involved history, would not be complete without tales of a darker, mysterious nature, and it's hardly surprising that the house and grounds have their share of ghosts. There's the Black Monk, a ghostly baby who used to cuddle up to ladies' guests. A recorded death of an unfortunate man who died seeing the Rufford ghost, and the famous White Lady, often seen in Rufford Park. This is claimed to be the lady, Arabella Stewart, whose parents were secretly married at Rufford in 1574. She tragically ended her days in the Tower of London. The abbey has a widespread of reputation for being haunted over the years. Stories from the local people who claim to have seen the little old lady in black and the white lady gliding through the trees. More recently, there was a great alarm when a guest of the house described the appearance of a gigantic monk with a fleshless skull under his cowl. Housemaids recounted with horror the apparition of a black monk touching them on the shoulder or being reflected through a mirror. Several noble ladies who have stayed overnight in the house have recalled the experience of a cold, clammy baby nestling up to them in bed. Whatever the explanation of these appearances may be, it is certain that the belief in them was both widespread and highly credited, for in an early register of the parish church at Edwinstowe was entered the burial of a man who died from fright after seeing the Rufford ghost. At the bottom of a staircase leading from the chapel were some large flagstones, which always seemed damp. These were removed in 1869. They were removed to reveal a skeleton with a bullet hole through its skull. The bones were removed to Wellow churchyard and buried there. Some have blamed Sir George Savile, the 8th Baron, for some of the supernatural happenings, for it is said he dabbled in black magic. No doubt, ghosts or no ghosts, these ancient stones at Rufford could tell some stories. Abbeys were more than just religious institutions. The monks that ran them were politicians and captains of industry, as well as being in charge of the spiritual welfare of the country. The abbeys of northern England controlled the wool trade. The money was supposed to be means to an end, supporting a life of prayer, but wealth had led to corruption. Religious communities were notorious for their greed, lax morals and hypocritical lifestyle. War and violence, confusion and hunger were common facts of life during the Middle Ages, but within a monastery, a place or community where monks are vowed to live a religious life, there was an order, a sense of purpose and a feeling of community, not to mention food on the table. A priest was appointed to represent the church within a given parish. Parishes are local church communities, each with their own priest. In order for church services to be held in the monastery, some monks also became priests. For the most part, however, the monks would have little contact with the outside community. Europe during the Middle Ages was made up of dozens of territories, ruled by different kings and dukes. There were powerful rulers in some parts of medieval Europe. In others, there were not much control and not much law and order. But in all of these different lands, many people had something in common: their belief in Christianity. During this time, kings and nobles donated pots of money and huge chunks of land to the church to build monasteries. Donating money and land was a way to ensure their prayers would be heard, because monks worked hard to live a holy life. People thought monks' prayers were more likely to be answered. When a nobleman built a monastery, he expected all the monks inside to pray for his soul. All those monks' prayers seemed a sure way to guarantee going to heaven, even if the noble life wasn't very heavenly. Monks would pray 8 times a day, 7 days a week, and a copy manuscript in writing. Monks would honour their vow to eat in silence. The wool trade that the monks controlled employed many people, and in the Middle Ages, wool became the country's biggest export. By the 1300s, there were 15 million sheep, almost 3 times the human population. So fullers would have been thick on the ground too, a vital link between weavers, dyers and cloth merchants. Fulling was one of the worst jobs in the medieval times. In order to make wool soft and malleable, it had to be trodden on for at least 2 hours underfoot in stale urine. You could earn up to 3 times as much as a field labourer, but the work was so unpleasant that this must have been little comfort. Monks wrote a book of magic tricks, but not for people to have fun, rather to be a serious expose of con artists in the middle world, not a manual for doing tricks. Turning water into wine by placing wine-soaked bread into the water. Making an apple move by placing a beetle hidden inside the apple. How to make an egg fly by tying a long hair around it. The monks wrote the book in order to stop people performing magic. Performing magic tricks at this time could get you executed. Rufford Abbey is surrounded in 150 acres of parkland. In 1146, Gilbert de Gaunt, Earl of Lincoln, founded the Cistercian Abbey of St Mary the Virgin. The monks of this order were known as the White Monks because of the habits of undyed wool, believed in the value of an austere life based upon prayer and hard work. Rufford was the fifth and last daughter house of Rufford Abbey in Yorkshire and was founded under the patronage of Gilbert de Gaunt, Earl of Lincoln, in 1146. At that time, the abbey's grounds were in the traditional boundary of Sherwood Forest. To make space for the abbey, 3 existing villages were cleared and the villagers were forced to move. Medieval records relate that there were frequent disputes between the abbot of Rufford and the men of Wellow, usually over the rights to wood from a local forest. When Henry VIII famously broke away from the Church of Rome in 1530, he was eager to stake his claim to the assets of the great Catholic religious order. One of these was Rufford, which by 1534 was worth £176. In 1536, he appointed the commissioners Lee and Leighton to find sufficient evidence to allow him to close down the abbey. Among the disgraceful offences they found at Rufford was the claim that the abbey possessed some of the Virgin Mary's milk. They also alleged that the abbot, Thomas of Doncaster, had broken his vows of chastity with at least 2 married and 4 single women, and claimed that 6 of the other monks were of disgraceful character. Following this, a royal commission closed Rufford Abbey, and the lands were granted to George Talbot, 4th Earl of Shrewsbury. It was a while owned by the 6th Earl, another George Talbot, that the transformation of the old abbey into a fine country house first begun, and under the guidance of the 7th Earl, new wings were added onto the north and south ends of the lay brothers' wing of the old abbey, forming some of the country house we still see today. In 1626, the Rufford estate passed to Sir George Savile and his first wife, Lady Mary, who was sister to the 7th and 8th Earls of Shrewsbury. The Saviles was a long-established and landed family whose seat was Thornhill Hall, near Huddersfield in West Yorkshire. The family supported the Royalists during the English Civil War, living up to their family motto, to fear God and honour the King, and Charles I visited Rufford in July 1642, shortly before raising his standard at Nottingham on August the 22nd, which signalled the start of the war. The family prospered under the restoration of the monarchy and continued to enhance and develop the estate. In 1680, George Savile, 1st Marquess of Halifax, pulled down the remaining old monastery and built a new north wing with large reception rooms and a long gallery. A bathhouse was built, and in 1729 a garden pavilion added. However, in 1837 Anthony Savile was employed to undertake a thorough redesign of the house. His design included a Tudor-style entrance porch with steps and balustrade. Then in 1841 a main avenue was constructed from the house to Nottingham Road and lined with a row of lime trees. These trees can still be seen today. Throughout the 18th and 19th centuries, the grounds were continually expanded and developed. In 1750, for example, the 8th Baron dammed the stream to the north and created the lake. Not only did he enhance the grounds, it also provided power for his new corn mill, known as Rufford Mill. Over the years, Rufford was inherited by distant relatives and illegitimate sons, one such being Captain Henry Savile, who was a well-known breeder of racehorses. His most successful horse was Cremone, who won the Derby in 1872, and a year later the Ascot Gold Cup. Cremone was buried at Rufford. His grave can be found in the animal graves, along with other family pets. Rufford made rough-cut wood coffins for the dead of the First World War, but this war was also heralded the beginning of the end to many large country estates, and Rufford was no exception. The estate suffered from rising taxes and wages, and reduced income from farm rents, so that by 1938, the trustees of the young third Baron were forced to sell the estate. The estate, house and contents were eventually taken over by the army in 1939 during the Second World War. This sculpture is based on the Makaton symbol meaning good. Makaton is a modern picture language based on diagrams, symbols and gestures. It is an aid to communication for people with learning and language difficulties. The hand was designed by children, young people and their carers who use Makaton, working with local sculptor and blacksmith Roger Lee. Over 7 workshop sessions, the young designers drew pictures and symbols expressing some of their own everyday experiences and the difficulties they face in accessing parks and leisure spaces. These were then translated into metal cutouts, symbols, pictograms and lettering by the sculptor. Combined with stickman figures welded from steel rods, they form the material and surface patterning of this eye-catching artwork. The eastern side of the summer house has a half-octagonal plan projecting into a circular pool with a fountain. The bath was supplied via a sluice-regulated aqueduct from a reservoir called Blackwalk Pond. The latter has been formed by damming a stream called Rainworth Water. The Nemone Fountain is also Grade 2 listed. The formal gardens were created in 1983 and are situated to the southwest of the abbey. The main path leads to a series of subsidiary paths. Look at these amazing Girl Guiding Nottingham centenary seat. By 1949, the house was deteriorating and a trust was founded to try and save it. The house continued to fall into disrepair, and in 1952, Nottinghamshire City Council decided to purchase the abbey in approximately 130 acres of land. In 1956, it was decided to demolish the upper floors. The 17th century north wing and the 18th century east wing. This was started but not finished, and English Heritage eventually took responsibility for the remaining buildings. A park ranger service was set up in 1969 with a 5-year plan to improve the grounds, restore the lake and plant 10,000 trees. Rufford was now a designated country park. Patch warrior from 1991. This statue originally stood in Duke's Wood, Eakring, on the site of the secret World War II oil wells drilled by American oil workers between 1943 and 1945. These wells in the heart of Nottinghamshire produced over 3 million barrels of high-quality oil for the British war effort. There are also quite a few names of remembrance for the people that died during World War II. In December 1886, 7 bales and 16 cases of ancient Rome antiquary arrived at Nottingham, a gift from the excavation at Nemi, south of Rome, carried out by Sir John Savile, Her Majesty's ambassador at Rome, who became first Baron Savile of the family estate here at Rufford Abbey. The site at Nemi was the great temple of Diana, and many of the terracotta, stone, bronze and pottery artefacts found there would seem to indicate she was a goddess of healing of women and childbirth. Some of the objects found at the shrine were votive offerings, objects left at the temple by Romans who believed that the goddess had or could heal them of their diseases. Replica hands, eyes and other body organs show what kind of illness was involved. The goddess Diana is represented by the bust on the stone podium. The temple structure representing the shrine has been decorated with handmade ceramic pieces, using motif copied from actual tiles found at Nemi. In Roman times, pottery tiles and plaques were used to decorate houses and public buildings. Inside the temple is a set of infinity mirrors. Peer into the glass-covered slots on the side of the temple, and you will see small replicas of votive objects that the artist has hidden inside. The Nemi antiques sent to Nottingham were only part of the total collection, some of which were displayed at Rufford itself, within the large country house as well as in the glass-roofed orangery. A large copy was made of one of the oil lamps found at Nemi and installed as a fountain in a circular pool as part of the orangery, while other copies of Roman wells, temple buildings and statuary were used as features throughout the lavish formal gardens. The first Lord Savile died at Rufford on the 30th of November 1896. Sometime later, more of the Nemi collection was passed on to the Nottingham City Museum, in whose care it is still in today. This is the memorial wall. Let's take to the sky with Jack. Thanks all for watching. Do take care and have a fantastic week ahead.